Alrighty, friends. Hello. Welcome to Cerebral Arcade. I am Stacey, and we're gonna be continuing Kentucky Route Zero today. Yay! Super excited. I was debating whether or not to try to fight with my other mic, which is a blue snowball, or actually a couple people said that you liked the audio better on my headset. So we're going to do headset audio again this week, and if you want me to try to fight with the drivers for the blue snowball, I will be happy to maybe do that for the next stream, but let me know what you're thinking. So yay, I am super excited. I actually don't know how long this is, so we're gonna dive in and hopefully finish the rest of the act today. But if it's a super, super long act, like Act 3, then we might not get to it. But hello, friends in chat. So good to see you. And yeah, let's dive in. Okay. Right, so last we saw we had these kind of small vignettes as we're traveling down. They live in the desert. So it's super interesting because they're kind of commenting on this sound that we can sort of only barely hear if we are even hearing that. It kind of sounds like we're just hearing some sort of extra diegetic music. And when we left off before, I was commenting on how I absolutely love this kind of like lyric, poetic interpretation of card suits. Way too many, obviously more than 4, but kind of interesting, right? 7, 3, 8. And then we have this moment where we can sort of decide what we want Ezra to say. I think Ezra was going easy. Or at least he's gonna say he was. And then I'm gonna select the option for forgetting, because that's kind of where we're at, right? Coming back to this, I talked a little bit in the last stream about how I loved that they seem to be playing a lot with memory and the way that we interpret memories in this particular episode. Which is actually like really appropriate for the kind of hypertext tradition that I have been talking about in previous streams of this game. So a lot of the early classic hypertexts were also really concerned with memory and its relation to literary forms. So you would have these pieces of literature that were very fragmented and kind of joined together with links in this way that was often kind of used to represent how memory actually works. And I enjoy the soggy brained here, which feels a little "Oh brother, where art thou," right? So interesting. So chat, you're kind of quiet today, but I see you're actually there. So do say hi and comment, and let's chat about the game. The forgetting game. ability to make some floating around money, and that lab pays cash in small envelopes upon completion of their little gauntlet of non-invasive tests. It's a project at the university. I think they're studying. I don't remember. So yeah, we also have, I'm gonna maybe turn the sound down a little bit on you guys' end, if that's okay. Okay, hopefully that's not too loud. Nobody seemed too interested in lab stuff that night. Okay, so let's hear about the book. Setting is an office building. Excellent. So I think part of me chose that choice because I feel like this game is sort of engaging with this self-aware postmodern tradition that I've been talking about in the previous streams, and so I think I'm actually, like, as the player, also trying to roleplay and be sort of within that fiction. Yeah, memory and perspective. It's a great point, and I think that's perfectly suited to the hypertext tradition that I was talking about as well. Whether that was intentional or not, it is super interesting. The sort of the classic hypertexts were also trying to fit themselves into this postmodern tradition that was really interested in form and small fragmented pieces and how those pieces played together or were nonsensical in the way that memory is as well. And you also see them engaging a lot with this kind of Saussurean linguistics philosophy stuff, where there's a lot of kind of engagement with this idea that you can never really understand things in terms of language. And so that process that I was talking about in the last stream, in between the intention of the author and the understanding of the reader, that actually is sort of an extrapolation from linguistics theory that says that you have these symbols and the things those symbols stand for, and the way that those relate together. So you can have a speaker, for example, who is trying to communicate a thing using a symbol. That symbol itself doesn't actually contain any meaning, but the person hearing it is sort of extrapolating meaning from it. And there's like whole branches of both linguistics and philosophy sort of built around both of those things. So I think there's a really strong argument that a lot of postmodernists were, in some form or another, kind of trying to engage with these ideas, either through talking about the nonsense of language or the difficulties of memory and mapping thought, and all of these different things. So anyway, totally side note rant. Which choice do we want to make here? And then I love this. I actually only read a bit from the middle, which, we talked a lot about kind of the death of the author and intention of the author in the last stream, and I sort of love that kind of screw you authors, we only read a little bit from the middle. It's just really great. Okay, something got messed up, a document misplaced or filed in the wrong heading. Wasn't really paying close attention to that part. So yeah, and I sort of love the parallel of the office building to what we've already played, and the fact that there are these parallels make us sort of constantly wonder, is this about us? Is it not? We had that sort of moment with the gas station in the last one where we stopped and we're like, oh, gas stations, we know all about those. Okay. Which is kind of interesting. So hypertext theorists would call that a cognitive link, because it's not the sort of link that you click on and take to another passage, but it is kind of this scrap that is being recalled by language. So this is a pretty long passage of us not having text. Very mysterious. Definitely tension building. Okay, so this one sounds more active, so I'm gonna choose that one. I'll have to do the mushroom bit. Okay, we're doing mushrooms. Okay. So Lemony, have you completed this act then? I'm excited. Oh, this is so cool. Okay, so this is really beautiful, and I was not sure if those little spirals were trees before, but they clearly are. Okay. Kate gently rolls a fallen branch and plucks something white from the underside, holds it up for Ezra to examine. Angel wings. Would we like a bite? Yeah, of course we would. I'm also having some mouse problems today. I don't know what's going on with my mouse. It doesn't want to respond. Okay, Ezra takes a small bite. What do we think? Okay, I'm not really sure that these will matter, but okay. I like to be able to tell where my food came from by flavor alone. I like to taste my surroundings. It's so interesting. What an interesting way to experience the world. Okay, should lit a second cigarette. So the sort of faded text is not a thing I have noticed previously. Gotcha. Okay. So this is, actually we have noticed it. So this happened in previous episodes as well to sort of indicate this kind of memory flashback thing. Mushroom hunting mentor. Nice. That's great. I'm laughing at the phallus joke. Okay, so all right. Can you eat it? Only once. It's deadly poisonous. Huh. Interesting. So I'm also sort of just now making the connection between this game's hyper focus on mushrooms and fungus and Mario, which is such an obvious connection that I actually have not made until this moment. Okay, grab any mushrooms that catch your eye and throw them in this bag. Alright, let's dig in a bare patch of dirt. Two promising specimens. The hot dog vendor tried to strike a conversation. That feels like it could be a reference to cart life. That's kind of interesting. Decided to give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he considered it part of his job. How big is my monitor? It's, the monitor is actually pretty good size. I am playing in windowed mode, but it's, still, like, at a decent resolution. Why do you ask? On my screen, this section appears in 2 text boxes. Oh, interesting. Um, hmm. I would try uh, to adjust the resolution, but I kind of worry it's going to negatively affect the stream. Dude, okay. Is it so worth it? Should I really start it again? I totally will. Okay. I'm gonna maybe just keep going then. That's so interesting though. So worth it. Okay, I'll do it then. Um, so let's um, I can't change the resolution now. Interesting. Hmm. So I'm probably just gonna let it go then because I don't want to like have to replay a whole bunch and bore everybody on the stream. But for my own curiosity now, I definitely am gonna have to go back and play it at a different resolution. That's so interesting. I don't really think very much about having really different experiences of a game at different resolutions. But of course, in this game, that's so sort of intentionally framed. Of course, it would be different, and it's kind of cool that it's like explicitly drawing attention to that. Um, okay. So I'd be interested in you sharing, Lemony, which parts of it are in a different text box. Is it these flashbacks here? Because I could totally see that working. Oh. I see. So it looks like we're kind of bouncing back and forth between which perspective we're seeing. Um, I can, yeah, and I can see how that is probably more effectively communicated. Okay. 2 text boxes. You can progress as the 2 mushrooms. Oh, that's cool. That's cool. Okay. Yeah, that's such a bummer. Um, I wonder why change it then for this resolution. Huh. Interesting. See, but I kind of love moments like this, right? Where, like, you had a very different play experience than I'm sort of actively having right this second. So I actually kind of love having these different play experiences that are actually sort of invisible in the fact that there is a different play experience that I could be having right now. So the only way that I would even know about that is from sort of talking to people after the fact, and or folks telling me while I'm streaming. But I really love that. Yeah, it's hard to say because the resolution is actually it's uh, like a pretty good size resolution. But yeah, wanting to fight. uh, so I see what you mean about it being a bit of a shame, but at the same time, it's it's kind of cool to have a different play experience than someone else, right? Um, I found this with Dark Souls where it there were actually so many different ways to experience that story um, that it actually, in some ways, it took a bit of the anxiety of did I make the right choice away from it because there's no way I could possibly know if I were making the right choice. Um, in any given situation. So then it sort of becomes about either two modes of play. One is seeking out exactly the thing you want and figuring out exactly how to do that, which is kind of the wiki format, or just going where it takes you and kind of comparing your journey to somebody else's, which actually feels really appropriate to kind of the themes of this piece so far. Um, and in some ways, actually, I can totally see where having two separate text streams would make this clearer who's speaking, but actually having them intertwined is also kind of a really interesting thing because it's relying a bit on language to do that conveyance for us. Um, yeah, we haven't really talked about Ezra's brother in a really long time. So yeah, Julian, that's right. Goodness. Yeah. Hmm. Interesting. Oh, that's really sad. Interesting. Hmm. Not many trees down here in the dark. And then that's such a great moment. They were definitely planted here deliberately by. I guess I don't know much about this place really. Um, yeah, that felt a little bit like a nod to the development process, right? Like, somebody really intentionally put these trees here, for reasons. It's a mystery. Let's look at the monument. And the text for sure. X plus O forever. Okay. Hmm. Yeah, exactly. I actually was just now kind of going, wait, is that outside my apartment? Is that, or is that in the game? Um, yeah. Oh, so cool. Oh my gosh. That's so many cats. Pariah. Uh, oh, that's so great. Is it full of ghosts? Probably. And I love this, like, uh, everybody clearly doesn't believe in ghosts, right? Even though I'm pretty sure we've seen some ghosts. Oh man, this is so great. I love how the shot is framed. Um, yeah, so good. I sort of don't want to progress and see what happens as this giant boat goes by. Oh, so good. So I love this moment because it's so like random. We just had a ton of cats on a boat go by in this thing that feels like the internet. And but something about that randomness like really fits into this world, um, which is full of these kind of non sequiturs that are meant to be kind of unsettling and build on our understanding. A chorus of Muse. That's great. Um, and yeah, exactly. It adds this feeling of being really ominous. But at the same way, like at the same time, it's really just delightful. It's a delightful boat full of cats because why not? And yeah, oh, that's so great. They managed to make cats really ominous, and yeah, it just that was fantastic. Also, again, I think I've said this in every stream I've done of this game, but the animation is so well done, particularly for these low poly models. It's really done a lot with kind of conveying things. Um, Life is everywhere. Uh, like the tree split open by lightning in Jane Eyre. I actually haven't read Jane Eyre, but sure. Do you want to talk more about it? Hey, maybe there are some mushrooms growing there. They do pile up as people forget the details. I feel so pointed at me. Okay, they're going to stay at the bus station. Yeah, interesting. I also kind of love that we have this moment of Ezra's backstory that makes him kind of seem like it gives the internal monologue for what could seem from the outside like a creepy little kid story. So yeah, that's a really interesting way of doing that as well. Uh, it's time to go. Sure. So that was a really lovely aside. I'm sort of, I wonder what happens if I say that I just want to take a nap. It's more intricate than it looks, and I like how things really slow down. Uniformly random selection. Interesting. That's where the ceremony took place. Ah. Oh, interesting. Let's go with Greta and Norm. Actually, I like the prison narrative better. Let's do that. Volunteer. That's great. And then it kind of undermines my expectations there. All right. Again, it sort of feels like these choices don't matter, but they kind of really matter to me because this is now my story and I want to tell it. Um, but only my story in as much as the game will let it be. So. Mm. This one's way more romantic. What are my thoughts on divergent narrative versus narrative that diverges and converges again? I think both have different uses. So divergent narrative is interesting, and there are a lot of ways to do it. So the one thing is if you are constantly diverging your narrative, the authorial burden on that can get really overwhelming. So there are a lot of strategies to sort of mitigate that. And one of the strategies is to have narrative that diverges and then converges again, and you have kind of this diamond shape. And that's fine. Sometimes, if that's not done well, it can feel like that undermines your choices a little bit. And this game is certainly doing the choice undermining thing in a way that feels kind of tongue-in-cheek, though, and in a way that feels deliberate. Some games it feels like we couldn't do anything else, so we had to kind of converge the narrative again. And so a lot of actually what my research and folks who I work with do for research is coming up with computational systems that can help manage some of that authorial burden so that you could have narratives that either take really small pieces and stitch them together like Legos instead of having this kind of branching path model. So some folks in my lab, Jacob Garby and Aaron Reed, made this really cool piece called Icebound that's kind of dealing with a narrative of that kind of structure. Some of the folks in my lab are doing tools to help generate small pieces of narrative so that you can better manage the authorial burden by not having to literally write everything. So there are some other really cool folks in my lab who are working on that stuff, like Kate Compton, James Ryan, lots of folks. And then you can do the brute force hand authoring approach, and sometimes that's successful and sometimes not. And I think it sort of just depends on what your goals are with the narrative and how realistically you're able to complete those goals. I think also rather than thinking of it as diverging and converging, it might be more useful to talk about them in terms of progression-based narratives versus emergent narratives, and then kind of the weird middle ground in between. So progression-based narrative would be sort of your like linear narrative sort of points, like a Zelda game or like this game, and then emergent narratives are kind of the stories that you tell about the choices you made in the game. Like Tetris could have an emergent narrative, for example, and that's kind of the story you tell after you've played Tetris. And then I'm really interested in the space in between those things. So so creating games that that have progression elements, but also that offer a tailored enough playthrough that you also are kind of getting a slightly different story each time you play through. So yeah, that was a really long side thing on on narrative structure. But yeah, the sort of different approaches to narrative are that's like literally what I am doing a PhD on. So I can talk about that forever and ever. So please ask more questions. And let's continue. I'll pass through Bat Sanctuary, which is really nice. Sure, check out all the plaques. Bat facts. Awesome. And the power company took over. It's just the other side of the Bat Sanctuary. The operator. So it's really interesting because we have this sort of quest-giving figure right here who has given us directions, and contrary to most quest givers, which are very, go exactly to this rock and kill 4 rats and come back with their pelts, there was a lot of, oh yeah, and stop by this thing, and if you see this on the way, do check that out. Oh man, it gets really dark. Okay, let's look. Reclaim these helmets and the names of the folks who wore them. Huh. Wow. Wow, that's really grim. Yeah. So that's so interesting because you have this kind of like elegy memorial thing going on, but at the same time, so much anger, and understandably so. Um, yeah. Oh man, so we have this choice for Shannon, and I'm not sure which one to make. Okay, yeah, we'll go with this one. Interesting. This is very spooky. Oh man. Hi, Skillies. Yeah. Yeah, when did you talk to them about that? I want to choose both of those options. Yeah, and I agree, Lemony. A lot of the discourse around meaningful choice in games is really simplistic, and I think a lot of it has to do with viewing choices in this kind of branching path way, which does not take advantage of all of the things that we can do with modern computers. So a lot of the alternate approaches are interested in incorporating AI techniques. And so that can be anything from having kind of AI systems that sort of control the narrative in different ways, either by managing dramatic tension or introducing key characters or things like that. or using kind of content generation methods to do some of the authoring work that I was talking about, or some of them are using AI in ways to kind of track different narrative like events and things like that. So I really think that those kinds of systems are where the future is going, but also it's really amazing what you can do with really small things. Like Dark Souls' narrative, for example, is not really using to my knowledge, any of those things that I was just talking about, but it's a really rich and engaging world because not only is it written well, but the narrative is designed into every aspect of that game. So the narrative is designed into the items that are left around and the level design and, all of these different things. And I think in order for games to have these really rich narratives, narrative has to be a thing that's kind of core to the design process and not just kind of slapped on at the end. And so yeah, you can definitely tell which games have narrative as a central element early in the development process and which ones don't. And that's not to say that less narrative games are bad by any means. I mean, Geometry Wars is one of my favorite games, but so Street Fighter actually, but it's a really different process, right? And if you want to make a narrative game, then narrative has to be a thing that's central from the beginning. Um, yeah. And I think what you're getting at also is probably a byproduct of narrative being brought in too late into the process. And then, you have these really sort of safe techniques that are used because in game development, everything kind of comes down to like cost benefit analysis, right? So some project managers will sort of decide like, oh, we think if we have, this, then it will gain us X amount of dollars. But having, a risky, untested narrative system could really hurt the game, and that's really scary, and we don't know what the numbers are on it, so we're not going to try. So yeah, and I think that's why a lot of the innovation that we see in storytelling is coming out of smaller studios or single authors even, because I think it would be really hard to get, a large publisher to fund something like Kentucky Route Zero, for example. Um, yeah. White noise syndrome. Interesting. Never touch a bat. Good to know. This feels like there are jump scares coming. I'm sort of like bracing myself. There's bats. I see them. Are they gonna come for me? Ah! No jump scares. Okay. Bats do it all the time. I love the writing here because it really does feel like the wall text that you see in like a science museum or something like that. That's really great. Very deep. Let's go with the deep one. Or drunk. So yeah, it does kind of feel like the light isn't actually doing anything. Maybe it will. Okay, we have a lot of bats here. Okay. All right. Interesting. It's all fake. It does kind of bother me they're tricking the bats. I'm not even gonna lie. There's like a lot of philosophicalness going on both sides. I'm just gonna point that out. Okay. So I can point the light around, you say? Oh, that's cute. Okay. Hey friends. That's pretty cool. Yeah, and I mean, this is also what I was talking about a little bit last week, where it doesn't actually matter if they were meant to be referencing it or not. If you interpreted it that way, then there is value in thinking about, like, okay, what does putting this game in dialogue with Jane Eyre do? So there's white noise syndrome is largely a mystery. I kind of love white noise syndrome. Okay. This is so creepy. Um, so yeah, so I think I've written a lot about how games do illusion and how they can do it better. And one of the things is that a lot of games have these moments of, oh, hey, that's that thing from this other thing. These moments of like, oh, that's, the PC from Super Meat Boy or whatever. And like that's interesting. Oh, that's super cool. Um, that's interesting, and a lot of times it's used in this humor way of kind of, oh yeah, cool, there's that thing. But real meaningful illusion is more useful to think about in terms of like, okay, if that is referencing this other thing, um, what does that say? What do these two things have in common, or where do they depart? What does it say if this is putting itself in dialogue with things like Mario or the hypertext, or these different communities? And so I think the question I would ask then is, what does this game uh, gain from thinking about in terms of Jane Eyre, for example? Okay, so I made a gameplay choice to look behind you and saw the skeletons. Um, is that not a meaningful choice, even if you didn't know you were making one? Uh, so I think it really, yeah, I think meaningful choice is so loaded there, right? But this game is kind of different in the way it handles choices. So for a lot of games, the kinds of choices you're making are ones that directly affect the characters on a sort of story level. So narratologists, which are people who study the construction of stories, have multiple levels at which they talk about stories. So there are lots of words for this that kind of mean similar things, like Russian formalists use like fabula and sujet. The pair of terms that I like the best are story and discourse. So the story level are the events that actually happen in the story, and then the discourse level are the events as they're told to the reader. So, for example, I went to the store, but first I parked my car. Uh, and then I bought groceries. The story order is I parked my car and then I went inside the store and then I bought groceries. But the discourse level is actually the the discourse is the order in which I told that, right? So it's it literally at the discourse level is we went to the store first and then we parked the car, which is kind of a different distinction, right? So you're operating on kind of these two different levels. So most games, the choices that they give you occur at the story level. So the sort of telltale types of story that you're referencing are usually if you do X, it will change the way the story turns out. This game, the choices they give you are almost entirely at the discourse level. So it seems like, so far, that the actual choices I make don't actually have an impact on how the story is going to turn out. So these are choices that are being made at the discourse level. So they affect how the story's told and my understanding of the story, but they don't actually seem to affect the outcome. So that's, I think, the distinction that I would draw there. And so this type of storytelling is something that in papers I have called extra-diegetic agency, which means we do have really real agency. We are changing our understanding of the story, but we're doing that at a level that is outside of the story world itself. So that's maybe the distinction I would make. All right. So I would say yes, like so things like the skeletons get into like really interesting territory, right? Because um, we don't think that's actually central to the way the story is going to turn out. It might be, it might not. That is occurring inside the story world, though, so that's maybe not quite. Like, that is probably some level of diegetic agency, but maybe not. I don't know. So, games get into this kind of like weird territory where things can kind of be in between. Um, I love this version of Shannon as kind of Shannon knows a lot about electronics and mechanics in general, and so I really love, she walks up to this person that she's never spoken to and talks about it. And this person's name is Morse. Okay. Don't install this type of phone for customers anymore. Oh, interesting. So, in referencing this kind of transition from uh, like from one form of technology to another, it's also making me sort of wonder where this game is going with this, or what it's trying to say. I mean, there are a lot of potential readings of that. So some people have made the connection between kind of this era of increased digitalization with previous eras of technology transition. The one that's kind of often cited as futurists, or kind of the change to industrial revolution, or um, the adoption of trains and phones. Um, so I'm kind of interested in if the game is trying to engage with that. But again, the technology company seems to be the evil big bad in the game. So what is that saying? Hmm. Sometimes it presents me with these choices where I want to make both choices. I will say that doesn't actually happen in games very often for me. It seems like a lot of times in games we get the choices, that are very, oh, this is the good choice, this is the evil choice, or like, oh, this is the nice choice, this is the sarcastic choice. And they're very clearly different. These ones, because it seems to be signposting what it's going to talk about pretty well, um, like there are times when I'm like, oh, I want to know about both of those things. Uh, okay. Lovers, carriers. Interesting. Okay, let's talk to Poppy. Yeah, I did remember that actually. But yes, thank you for the reminder. Definitely keep those coming. Hmm. All right, let's say the Bower. I love Kate. Yeah, it's really interesting because that feels like a little bit of a payoff from our previous choice. And I don't actually think it was a choice we made, but the one about Kate knowing about difficult pregnancies. Uh, Interesting. This is like engaging with so many things. Um, awesome. Okay. So yeah, this definitely for me anyway. The first thing that's springing to mind with all of these lady operators who all have names of uh, women from novels um, is kind of the often pointed to history of programming, actually, where originally programming was seen as women's work and something in line with like being a telephone operator. So you would have rooms of women doing the menial labor of programming, and then once programming became a thing that was typically contracted to defense organizations and began to rise in prominence as a career, then it's kind of switched over to being a male-dominated career. But there, you have this kind of like image of rooms full of women doing programming, and so I think by virtue of talking about these rooms full of women doing telephone and switchboard operating, it's also kind of paralleling that as well. Hmm. Yeah, and also it has this kind of valence of being the human the human underlying a technological interface, which is kind of an interesting thing to point out. Yeah, and then that stuff. Yeah, I definitely can also read the critique of the way that technology claims human jobs, but also the point that she makes of, oh, actually, maybe it's cheaper just to keep me. Oh, oh, uh, hey, what happened to Conway? No, please don't let that be the end of the act. Okay. No, it doesn't even matter. Yeah, I was saying though, I think it's also a critique of, these large corporate entities taking advantage of folks. Interesting. So it actually gave me the choices from before, which this game doesn't often do. So yeah, kind of an interesting, different manner of giving choices there. Nice. And I'm choosing small talk because we had previously mentioned small talk. So beautiful too. And it really, this screen feels a little bit like the sort of vector graphics from Asteroid. So I really love the way that this game is also putting itself in dialogue with the tradition of games history. What is this? Yeah. Sometimes I wonder myself. I don't know why. Apparently today I'm feeling really philosophical because I keep selecting every possible philosophical answer. Okay. All right. Playing a video game. So meta. Right. Interesting. So the video game he's playing is a claw machine, which is super interesting for the what gets to count as a video game question. Um, and while I do think claw machines are rigged, we're gonna give him a quarter. Yeah. Oh man, what should we try for? Hmm. Oh gosh. Okay, well, it sounds like the cowboy hat. That's what we're gonna go for. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to actually do this. Okay. Uh, the sound is great. Okay. Uh, we're gonna go up again. It's in the back right corner, right? Oh, I don't remember. Too far to the left. And it took me a turn to ask that. Oh, so funny. Okay, we're gonna go all the way right. Right. Okay. I'm gonna ask. Oh no, I meant to ask! Ah, this mouse, why? Okay, it grabs the hat, but it's only able to get a hold of the brim. Ah. Oh well. Okay. Sure. We're role playing Ezra. This isn't me that wants to see this happening, of course. Uh, sure. Aww. God, this game. Ah, the writing is so good. Oh man. I guess the first one, because I'm kind of invested in Shannon and Conway's relationship. Okay. So question, Lemony, since you have finished this episode, how much further would you say it is? Hmm. Let's do the squid. All of these tentacles, too, have this kind of Lovecraftian ethos thing. Okay, 2 scenes left or so. Are they long scenes? Would you say that I'm gonna finish before 9, or should I stop here and do another stream? It's so hard to gauge because things like how long to beat don't really take into account the fact that I stop and talk a whole lot. So, yeah. I will stop reading out loud though, because that also has been slowing us down a little. Not another stream. Okay. I probably will stop after this scene then. And then we'll split the next stream between finishing this and talking about other stuff that I think would be good to talk about at the same time as this. Um, it's kind of an interesting story too. Oh, after this one, I only have 1 scene left. This is a pretty in-depth scene. Okay. It's wiggling. Let's go with blue wheel. This is a really interesting scene, which is super, like, I'm not really sure why we're talking to this eel, but it does provide a really convenient means of exposition. um, Interesting. So yeah, and this again feels like that trope of seeing the same thing from a different perspective. We're getting a similar story from uh, totally different details, though. Okay, and now it's kind of totally diverged. Hmm. And also the movement. This is one of few moments of text where the text has actually fully stopped and the character stopped walking. So, or at least one of the few that I've noticed. Like it seems like the game has other ways of kind of doing that momentary pause or gating function. Yeah, lots and lots of talk about things being slower down here. Yeah. Is that our muses? Our chorus?
This world is
It
not
is!
my
Yay!
home. I'm just passing through.
Awesome.
My treasures and my hopes are placed beyond the blue. Many friends and kin have gone on before, and I can feel at home in this world anymore. Oh Lord, you know
The soundtrack to this game is so
I
good.
have no
Ah, love it.
friend like you.
Okay.
If heaven's not my home, oh Lord, what will I do? Angels beckon me to heaven's open door, and
Yeah,
I
and good
can
point. The lyrics.
feel at home in this world anymore.
So I'm gonna go
I have a
because
lovely
sadly I have some more work I have to do later tonight. But now I know what I'm gonna be listening to while I do it. That was so great because after the last few, I was like, okay, well, let's hear the story. Uh, Interesting. Aussie Impala. A neighborhood. Okay. That's a really cool shot. I remember this. Hmm. What do you mean by that's a real instrument? So this feels like a nod to characters not existing unless we fill them in. Yeah, yeah, I am familiar with theremins. And there's actually an artist that has made a Pamela Z is her name, and she has constructed these really beautiful electronic gloves that are wired up to theremins, but also I think to other kind of digital inputs. And so it's really cool. She does some really cool sound art with that and sings. I'm curious if this is another moment that has two two different things. Oh no no, don't apologize. This is a yes and exchanging. Um, it's the only instrument you never touch. It's really interesting the kind of hyper focus on hands in this shot, right? Ah, so cool. Haunting. Oh, cool. Yeah, I was actually wondering about that. Um, because I remember like we recorded a cat and we hadn't really done anything with it. Hmm. Whoa. That's just a super cool shot. Sorry. Uh, um. Okay. So I'm kind of interested in how this is playing out from sort of a dramatic tension perspective. So I kind of keep waiting for like the twist or the big moment or something because Conway is gone. So like we don't know anything about how that happened. And uh, oh hi, good to see you. Um, so yeah, so like he's gone, and I keep expecting uh the question of where he went to be answered. So yeah, Act 4, raising questions in Act 4 usually are these kind of like big questions that are going to be answered with a twist or a huge reveal or something. So I keep sort of waiting for that reveal to happen, and you don't think there's a twist. Um, So yeah, maybe a twist is the wrong wording, but certainly like the reveal, right? Um, Conway is gone, just gone. Well, so far anyway. Okay, so that's the end of Act 4. Ah, it's a tragedy slowly marching as the characters peel off. So, I'm actually really interested in that. Um, I want to say yes, but usually tragedies unfold a bit more dramatically, I guess. So, um, so usually with tragedies, you have a tragic hero who is sort of taken by their own tragic flaw. And so it seems like it's setting that up for Conway with the drinking. Um, but yeah, I don't know. And yes, Orlando, you have to play this game. It's so good and so interesting. Um, yeah, so I don't know. I mean, but even still, like usually the death of the protagonist, if that's what is happening here, due to their tragic flaw, you you expect that to kind of be a bigger moment or a moment with more sort of ceremony, and that also usually happens in Act 5. So I'm kind of interested in what's happening, and certainly I think Conway's tragic flaw, as you're saying, of course, the drinking and becoming a skeleton, which we saw, but there also was this moment that I'm clinging to that happened in Act 1 where we found a book, and that book told us how the story was going to end because it basically led me to believe that that was the story. As it had played out so far, it was true to the player character's version of the story, and then it led me to believe that a certain ending is going to happen, and I can't let that go until I see the actual ending. So, yeah, I no, I don't want that to be the case. So it's actually not at all Conway becoming a skeleton that I'm opposed to. It's the lack of ceremony with which that happened. Um, Yeah. Yes, it does. It talks about him sitting at an adding machine in an antique store drinking whiskey. So we the adding machine. Interesting. No, don't tell me this. You're crushing my dreams, Lemony. um yeah, you're actually you might be totally right. Um Yeah, I really strongly remember it being an antique store. I could be wrong, but that has like stuck in my head. So, and and maybe the fact that it was at an adding machine is a red herring. I don't know. Now I feel like I'm gonna have to go back and look at this. Um, but yeah, it so hmm, yeah, I don't know. I feel like I have a lot to think about and process. Um, Once they wrap up character arcs, they're done. Can you say a little bit more about what you mean by that? Uh, Man, okay, so this act was entirely falling action, which we would expect. Um, Donald Lula Joseph plotline. There wasn't any more after F3. Yeah, but they felt like side characters to me. They didn't feel like I mean, Conway has felt like our protagonist, our sort of tragic hero. Um, so for him to be totally absent in Act 5 would be uh, I don't know, unusual. But I mean, this game also is kind of about subverting expectation. Um, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I feel like I have a lot to process. It's funny because in previous acts, I felt like I had a lot to talk about. I talked about all sorts of stuff. And then when I actually went to write the blog posts about that, I ended up writing about some of the stuff I talked about, but mostly about totally different stuff. And so I suspect that when I write about Act 4, that will probably be true again. Um, so in the last stream, I talked a lot about the nature of storytelling and its role in sort of social interactions and you know death of the author and all of these things, right? I suspect that's not at all what I'm going to talk about when I actually write about Act 4, but I suppose we'll see when that stuff comes up. So I do need to probably stop streaming so that I can finish up this last bit of stuff that I have to do tonight. Um, if there are any final questions or comments, please definitely ask them now because with the chat delay, I probably won't see them for a few seconds. Um, and otherwise, thanks so much for joining. It's so much more fun to play stuff when I have people that are really engaged in chatting and hanging out with me, and it's super cool. If you're not already following the stream, definitely do follow it. There's also Cerebral Arcade on Twitter and on Facebook, um, and those are updated pretty regularly. And and if you like me and you want to hang out with me, I'm also on Twitter and Instagram and Snapchat and all the things. Uh, I am also really interested to see how the Weaver plotline unfolds. That's such a thing. So I feel like there are still a lot of questions that aren't answered, and those are all questions that I would expect to be answered in Act 5. So, yeah, what will the antiques be? Who ordered them? Why? There's lots of questions, and then I mean the nature of Dogwood Drive, like what even has the point of all of this been? Um, I am really interested. Supposing Conway did turn into a skeleton, which is fine. Um, it's that doesn't necessarily mean like death or him being gone, right? Because we've already seen characters who are skeletons who are still, normal sentient beings. So yeah, I also want to get a little bit more closure on that and see how it turned out. So yeah, thanks so much for watching. You're all fantastic, and I will hopefully see you on Wednesday when I'll be playing something else that I haven't determined yet. Um, since I have a new computer that can actually handle things now, I'm thinking I might give Epistory another shot and see how that goes. So definitely come back on Wednesday, and I'll see you guys then. Bye.